Just preparing. Okay.
Thank you, everybody, and welcome to the Ordinary Council meeting, the 16th of September 2021. We'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land and pay respects to elders past and present. This meeting is live streamed on Council's website to allow the community to follow Council debates and decisions. Members of the public participating in a meeting agree to have their image, voice and personal information, including names and address, recorded and publicly broadcast. Snowy Valleys Council does not accept liability for any defamatory remarks or inappropriate comments that are made during the course of a meeting. Any part of the meeting that is held in closed session will not be streamed. Please ensure that mobile phones and other electronic devices are turned off or in silent mode for the duration of the meeting, and no recording of voice or images is permitted. In the event of an emergency at a council meeting, please evacuate the building using the nearest exit and follow the instructions given by the wardens. And if participating in the meeting from an alternative venue, please enact the evacuation plan for the location if required. Council is now operating under temporary provisions expiring on the 31st of December 2021 of the Local Government General Regulation 2005, which gives Council discretion to allow councillors to attend remotely under exceptional circumstances. And councillors, we're all attending remotely. So thank you. Councillors, any apologies? No apologies. Declarations of pecuniary interest. Councillors. Councillor Lata.
Yeah, thanks. In relation to the confidential section 13.2 and 3, specifically in relation to the contract tenders for lighting and the supply of bulk materials, I have a non-pecuniary interest and I'll be remaining in the room to vote on that based on the fact that I own an aeroplane and have it hanged with the Tumut Aero Club at the airport.
Thank you, Councillor Lada. Any other pecuniary interests? Thank you. No public forum. Confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting, 15 July. Okay. Councillor Isselman and Councillor Ham. Okay. Anything arising from that?
No, nothing from me.
Okay.
Councillor Ham.
If I could, Mr. Mayor, I just want to comment on 11.1 and 13.2. 11.1 being the Tumbarumba Men's Shed and 13.2 Orney Community Hall. And just to note the positive feedback that came back from there, and to thank those committees for the letters of thanks they sent to council, and just that was just really nice to receive. And we have great faith that both those projects will be tremendously successful.
Thank you, Councillor Ham. Anything further? That's the minutes, so I'll put the motion. All in favour? That's unanimous, thank you. Right. Sorry, it's just taking me a while to scroll through. Councillors, brings us to the mayoral minute regarding the public forum on Elliott Way closure in the Snowy Mountains Special Activation Precinct. I'll give you the mayoral minute. Any comments, councillors? Councillor Ham.
Yeah, I was wondering if we could go to committee to discuss this SAP and the Kosciuszko National Plan. Or am I the only one who wants to say anything?
Not normally, but yes, you're moving that way. And
yes,
we have a seconder in Councillor Cross. All in favour? Councillors, we're now in committee. I'll pass over to Councillor Ham.
First up, I do want to compliment the CEO and team for getting this public forum up and going so quickly. It was tremendous. I think it's even post-COVID, I hope it's something that we can do, because we got people there that, you know, are happily at home at 7 o'clock at night and don't want to go out to a town meeting. And it allowed us to have speakers from New South Wales and things like that. I really like the format, and I hope it's something we do a lot more. I personally am a lot clearer on what the SAP is and how the Special Activation Precinct in Jindabyne is in Jindabyne and is not actually impacting us directly, though there will be a ripple effect. So I'm happy with that. And then I'm also happy today that we had someone come and speak on the Kosciuszko National Park planning and talk to us about Yarragabili and sort of like allay some of my fears that have been coming up. Though I really think as a council we should provide some feedback to them, just how precious Yarragabili is, and in consultation with the Indigenous community, just how we want to go forward in that area.
Thank you, Councillor Ham. I think the point is they should come to us as well. And I think that'll happen in the future. Councillor Isselman. You're on mute, Councillor Isselman.
The other part that's to be recognised from the presentation we had this morning was that Kyandra is having a plan developed, and we've asked that they keep us more involved with that as well. And I think that's important because I as Councillor Ham has suggested, felt a little bit left out of the process in relation to the SAP project, and I was very much disillusioned about how we were not consulted and so on. I'm not quite so concerned about that now, but I am concerned that we maintain an awareness of what's going to be happening in the future and what might happen to Kyandra as a plan and a forward project as well.
Thank you. Councillor Cross.
I endorse what Councillor Ham said. It was a really successful forum. I think Elliott Way, the presentation at National Parks presented with all the photos, really showed the devastation and how challenging it had been to, or is going to be, to rehabilitate. But I also think it highlighted the possible inadequacy that national parks hadn't really considered how difficult it would be, and that they were hampered by their procurement processes in not being able to have our assistance in, as we have great knowledge of how to rehabilitate areas that have been impacted by bushfires. So I think hopefully what will come out of that is that they can then review their processes to make better use of local knowledge. The other thing I wanted to say was that I hope that they've realised that there are other voices that should have been included in those conversations around the SAP and around Elliott Way with the Aboriginal people, the Narragaow people.
Thank you, Councillor Cross. Anyone further? Councillor Lada.
Yeah, I just point out too that you know it makes a big difference when you've got a good team tendering for these products, because you know we weren't successful on this tender to do that job. But once again, it just highlights the risk involved with actually tendering for these bigger projects, because you know you've obviously encountered a whole heap of problems with this job that were unforeseen, and it makes it very difficult. So you know, it just gives me a great deal of confidence that you know with the level of expertise that we have in our civil works team, that you know when we're able to do those sort of planning works and get it right, you know, the majority of the time.
Thank you, Councillor Lada. Nothing further? Could someone move we go back out of committee? Yes, Councillor Ham, Councillor Cross, all in favour? Carried unanimously. So we need to move in a seconder for this one, I think. Do we not have one? I don't think we have one.
We don't.
No. Councillor Ham? Councillor Cross, same again. Okay, anything further? I'll put them, no, it's a mayoral minute. We don't need a mover in a second. Sorry. So I'll put the motion. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on. I'm having a few computer issues here in my laptop.
Mr. Mayor, can I suggest that for the voting for the Mayor and Deputy Mayor that we move items 1 and 2. Oh, sorry. What item here?
We're up to 10.1.
Yep, 10.1. So look at items 1 and a decision on 2, and then I can take over as returning officer.
Do I have a mover for 1 and 2?
So in 2, we just have to make a decision whether you want to do ordinary ballot, preferential ballot, or open voting by show of hands, noting that as we are electronically holding the meeting, if it is either A or B, as in ordinary or preferential, we'll have to call a separate meeting for that. Can only do it via open voting via electronic means.
Well, can I suggest that, councillors, that we move 1 and 2C? All of 1 and just 2C. All in favour?
So move and seconder?
Move in a second, sorry. Councillor Larder's moving it. Councillor Wright seconding it. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Okay, Mr. CEO, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As returning officer, I have invited nominations for the position of Mayor and Deputy Mayor for Snowy Valleys Council for a period up to the 4th of December or a maximum period of 1 year or the next date of the election. In accordance with the Local Government General Regulation 2005, 2 or more councillors may nominate a councillor, one of whom may be the nominee for the position of Mayor or Deputy Mayor. Nominations must be in writing and the nominee must consent to their nomination in writing. I have a nomination that meets those criteria for Mayor and Deputy Mayor. And I just seek whether there's any other nominations from the floor. So I have a nomination for James Hayes as the Mayor and a nomination for Councillor Larder, John Larder, as Deputy Mayor. Is there any other nominations? As there is only one nominee for the role of Mayor and Deputy Mayor, I declare that Councillor James Hayes is elected as Mayor and Councillor John Larder is elected as Deputy Mayor. Congratulations, councillors.
Thank you, CEO.
Mr. Mayor, we may want to look at the other provisions in that recommendation there. So 4 through to 9.
So we need a mover for 4 to 9. Although the election's already been conducted, do we need to move 4?
We need to make that decision, yes. Yeah.
So 4 to 9, mover. Councillor Wright, Councillor Risselman. Any discussion? Any comments? I'll put the motion. All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you, councillors, and thank you for your confidence. I really appreciate it. And let's see what happens after the 4th of December. Councillors, we move on to 10.2, voting delegates and proposed motions for Local Government New South Wales Annual Conference 2021. Recommendations there 1 to 4, and 4's got A and B. Do I have a mover? Councillor Ham, Councillor Cross. Councillor Ham, any comments? Mute, Councillor Ham.
We're going to committee about this one. I think they're very important points to be discussed.
Certainly moving that way. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Larter, all in favour? That's unanimous, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First up, particularly at this time of going with looking at financial sustainability, I'm very pleased that we're putting in something about the FAGS grant and trying to get better assistance there from the federal government. I would actually like to add an extra, I'm not sure whether this is possible, but I'm going to bring it up that I am just real ropeable about the emergency fees levy.
Services levy.
And you know, having gone to these SRV meetings and heard it and actually putting into the calculator what people are paying, you know, this is just a terrible, I think it just seems really wrong that the state government is just putting this cost onto us. Boom, out of the blue, find yourself another $725,000. I think as a council we should refuse to do it, but at least in short term we should put in a recommendation that, you know, and particularly councils that are newly merged and suffering from bushfire trauma should not have to pay this. So that's my recommendation that I'd like to put forward.
CEO, how do we handle something like that?
Through the chair, Mr. Mayor, item 4A1 part 1 talks about the transfer of the emergency services levy to council as part of our discussion around the detrimental impacts on council's financial sustainability. So I think the matter that Councillor Ham has raised regarding cost shifting from the state to local government without the subsequent funds made available for that is adequately covered in that, and we can expand out on Councillor Ham's details when we do the full motion submission, which requires all the background work to be submitted with that motion. If Councillor Ham is happy with that, we'll go about that that way.
Councillor Ham?
Yeah. No, that sounds good. Just had to get that off my chest.
That's okay. Councillor Larter.
Well, why can't we just get the CFO to raise an invoice to the state government for cost shifting?
Through the Mayor, Councillor Larter, we are trying to track cost shifting, and previously in the financial statements, a lot of councils used to track what had moved in that financial year. As local governments across New South Wales, we have been discussing going back to that mechanism and actually trying to track those costs and ask the state to be accountable for that. So I think that's the first step, is to capture those costs and have some evidence to back what we know is actually happening.
Well, we know of one cost. It's in writing. It's the emergency services levy. So I mean, that'd be the first invoice I'd raise. If they don't pay it, give them a solicitor's note demanding payment.
The issue being that legislatively, as we are a function of the state, it's a bit hard for us to serve notice on the department that makes us exist.
There's always an excuse for them.
I will note that it's basically insurance, the emergency services levy, in a way, and anybody with rural property will probably agree that insurance premiums have gone up significantly in the last year and even the last 2 years. So I've noticed quite a large rise in mine, and I imagine most people have the more costs to pay. Councillor Risselman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I so totally support what Councillor Ham has said. It feels to me like we're being punished for not looking after our council area and not stopping bushfires happening. It seems like it's an impulse because we've had some disaster, and I think that's very, very, very unfair.
Thank you. Anything further, councillors? Do we move out of committee? Councillor Ham, you're moving out of committee, or
Sorry,
something else?
Mr. Mayor, I want to then talk about the second motion, which is what we brought up at the last meeting about the Boundaries Commission.
Yes.
And my thanks to everyone for voting on that. I appreciate that. It's been brought to my attention that Gundagai have asked for Section 218C to be enacted, and I encourage people to look at the OLG website to see the response from the minister, which basically was, look, thank you. We'll get that enacted. However, your business case study is the same as what it was before, which to me, in a way, that's sort of like saying, well, yeah, we've seen this and you know what the outcome is. So I've had a few people saying that this was a bit weak and that we weren't taking it seriously, but we certainly are. But we just want to make sure that we are doing it correctly, and that we, if people are going to put money, time and effort into this boundary redistribution, that it's done well and done once.
I certainly agree, and I would imagine that the good folk of Gundagai, Cootamundra, wouldn't be terribly encouraged when they read that letter from the minister.
No. I agree. Thank you. Moving out.
Moving. Well, let's wait and see if anybody else wants to say anything before we move out. Anyone else? No? Thank you, Councillor Hamler. I've got a mover to move out. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wright. All in favour? That's everyone. Thank you. So here we go. Do we have a mover and a seconder for that?
We do. Councillor Ham and Councillor Cross.
Okay. Anything further? Put the motion. All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. (10.3) Financial performance as 31 July. Councillor Ham. Councillor Cross. Councillor Ham.
Thank you, CFO, for this report. And being the beginning of the new financial year, there's not many discrepancies there, except I was curious. Employee costs are below year-to-date budget, and that's been put down as staff taking winter toil. I'm just wondering if the CFO could talk to us about the impact COVID and the lockdown has had on the council. Have we had any financial assistance for our area, and have a lot of staff had to take leave without pay for homeschooling and things like that? Has that been an issue?
CFO.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Ham. There have been small impacts on our staff, especially those that had to homeschool their children, but in essence, overall, there has been very little leave taken. Most of our staff have pivoted quite quickly to work from home. The outdoor workforce continued to do their work and work on the projects. As for financial assistance for council, we have not received any due to COVID. We have lodged an application to be part of the future financial assistance program in case we will need it.
What does that mean? What is the future financial?
Should this continue and maybe we go back into lockdown, maybe we have to send people home or stand them down, we would be eligible after paying our staff for, I believe, 4 weeks under the award of special leave. We are then eligible for assistance from the state.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Cross.
I'm just going to ask if there was any impact on staff having to do homeschooling as well as being able to do their own work at home, and how they're being looked after.
CFO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I might defer this one to the CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, there has been an impact of that work. We have worked very closely with all of our staff. The management team have been out there in regular contact with our staff. We've got a number of mechanisms going to make sure that our staff know that we're there to support them. We have an overall issued some notices about how people can go about getting assistance with various leave and planning their day. And every individual employee has a work plan that they've worked through with their supervisor, and their supervisor is regularly in contact with them. There are some scenarios where people have changed the spread of their day, and we've been really pleased to see our staff be very flexible in their response. Some staff are getting up earlier in the morning, doing a period of council work, then assisting their children to homeschool during the day and doing some work afterwards. We are also very concerned about fatigue with our staff, and we are making sure that we're managing that fatigue and giving people the option to access some of their leave and some of the provisions under the Splinter Award. We also are noting that the outdoor workforce has gone about their business and modified the way that they've been doing their business to maintain social distancing, wearing their masks, limiting the amount of people in confined spaces such as vehicles, and the staff have been very responsive to doing that work. We've also started up a register of redeployed staff and redeployed tasks for our staff. We believe very strongly that we have a very good workforce here at the Snowy Valleys Council, and we would like to maintain that workforce, and their employment puts money out in the community that does circulate around in our community. Our businesses, many of our businesses are struggling at the moment, and it's important to keep them paid. And we do certainly have more work than what we can handle, and we are looking to redeploy people. Fortunately, we have come out of lockdown, which has eased some of that load, and the majority of kids have returned to school, but noting they're back on school holidays as of close of business tomorrow afternoon. But our staff have responded fantastically around this, and we have made sure that we've kept in contact and everyone has felt supported. We've had quite a lot of people turn up to our all-staff Zoom sessions where we've talked about issues and answered questions. All of our supervisors have been in regular contact. So very, very impressed with what our staff have done to pivot and respond to the current situation.
Thank you. And I have to add that I think the SPC staff newsletter is a fantastic initiative, and it's something that I look forward to looking at. It makes my day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? So, Councillor Hem.
Mr. Mayor, the next point, it has materials and contracts expenditure is below budget again, and this due to staff taking winter toll. That may be the case, but I wonder if the Director of Infrastructure might be able to speak a little bit about this wet weather. And I know things like Snowview, which were to be started this week or something, is being impacted by the ongoing wet weather and the fact that we're looking at a wet September and October and how that's going to impact things like the Snowview estate.
Thank you, Councillor Ham. Executive Director.
Yep, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor Ham. I suppose, yeah, our construction season has commenced in earnest this month. So I suppose part of our crews have been on winter toil over the winter when we shut down the majority of our construction. They're largely back on site now. We've got a very hectic works program this year. We're into it. It is going to be weather dependent, and also the ongoing COVID restrictions could impede on our works program in getting contractors, such as our ceiling contractor. That's a $2 million program that we try and deliver each year, and that could be impeded by the availability of contractors coming out of other states to assist us with that. So it is going to be quite flexible and fluid. in response to ongoing wet weather, COVID restrictions, and the capability of our workforce. And we'll continue to monitor it really closely and report on any changes through the quarterly budget review process. So we'll make sure that we report through that process and make councils and the community aware of any changes to that program. Does that sort of answer the question, Councillor Ham?
Yeah, that's really appreciated. And I think that's probably what I was aiming towards, is just keeping the community involved with what's happening. So, yeah, I've certainly noticed people on the roads a lot and stop-start signs and things like that. So it's great to see things happening.
Thank you. Nothing further? Can we put this motion? All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Statement of Investments, August 2021. Mover. Councillor Larder. Councillor Cross. Councillor Larder. Nothing to say. Any comments? Councillor Cross.
A quick question, Mr. Mayor. The Alpine Way and the Work for Transport New South Wales, is that private works that's actually generating income for council?
I would imagine so. Executive Director Korsh.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, we certainly manage those works through our commercial works arrangement. Bit different to when we're undertaking private works, in that we include a profit margin when we're undertaking private works. The arrangement with Transport New South Wales is certainly money back plus covering of our indirect costs, being a portion of our depots and our replacement of plant and equipment and all that sort of stuff. So not profit as far as cash goes, but certainly helps with the running of the organisation and covering costs.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Pritchard.
I know that the Reserve Bank Governor has indicated that there'll be zero interest rates for the next 3 years. Yeah, that'll be impacted by our investments, I guess.
I'd imagine that would, Councillor Pritchard, certainly. And that's one big change over the 4 years of this council, and certainly the previous councils, where you could rely on a significant amount of income from interest. This council has seen that decline, and the council in the future, the next council, won't see very much money coming in from much income coming in from investments at all. So yes, that's the state of play.
Thank you.
Anything further, Councillor Benjamin?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to get an overall update on the FOGO project and how it's going.
Is this part of governance and finance?
Yes.
Fit in
Are we
here?
on 4. Are we on 10.4?
Yes, it's got FOGO in there. Yes, let's get a question. Executive Director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor Benjamin. Very pleased with how the rollout of the FOGO collection service. It's pretty much all delivered, and along with the bin harmonisation project, and we're in the process of going through the actual collection process, the materials being sorted and going off for processing. So very pleased about how all that's gone, and very pleased about how well it's been received by the community overall. The other aspect of the project, which is the processing facility, Councillor Benjamin, that's still in the approval phase. So we're probably, I'd be estimating we're probably a good 2 years away from having that facility up and running, which would then be us processing the organic material here ourselves locally, using local jobs, and hopefully being able to utilise that material locally. At the moment, it's not going to landfill, obviously, it's going off for processing, but we'd like to be doing that processing ourselves, and that part of the project's probably 2 years away.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
Councillor Smith, you had a question? On mute, Councillor Smith.
Yes, the question was relating to the jobs. How many jobs will that in fact create when that comes online?
Executive Director.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the question, Councillor Smith. It'd be several jobs. So the infrastructure will be built and owned by council, but we are entering into a partnership with Velmar to actually run the facility and operate the facility. So they'll look after the staffing. So we're expecting in the order of 3 or so jobs, new jobs.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything further, councillors? Put the motion. All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, 11.1, Caravan Park, 30 Paddy River Falls Road, Borough. Councillor Ham, Councillor Smith.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm quite happy to go with number 1, recommendation, receive the report, but not with approve it, because I haven't seen a plan. There's so little information about what's being provided here, and like even the purpose as a caravan park. You know, apparently there's also supposed to be a store in there, but that's not in the development application. I feel that there's very little information for me to make an informed decision on this caravan park. Love the concept of having a new caravan park and more accommodation, fabulous. But I am aware of people who live close by, their concerns. I haven't seen any of their concerns. I haven't seen the DA. I can't make a decision here.
Councillor Smith, do you concur?
Yes, I agree with Councillor Ham in that sense that we didn't get a plan where the caravan park is actually to be built in relation to the road and the road going down to the falls. That as I understand it, that it's near that intersection. So I'd like to see the plan of where that's going to be, the land use, as well as all the other factors that have been mentioned. And we did, of course, discuss this in our workshop earlier on, that most councillors, as I understand it, would like to see some more information before we actually consider it for decision in council.
So if I can ask the mover and the seconder, if we just move 1 and let 2 lapse, CEO, how does that stand?
Mr. Mayor, can I suggest that we include a 2, that we defer the matter for consideration at the 7th of October extraordinary meeting? That way the applicant doesn't have to wait through to the later meeting in October, and we can include that in the extraordinary agenda if the mover and the seconder are happy with that.
Mover and seconder happy? That's a nod from both of them. Okay, any further discussion, councillors? Okay, with that amendment to number 2, we'll put the motion. All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, councillors. Management report, Community Recovery Report, September 2021. Councillor Smith and Councillor Cross. Councillor Smith.
Again, we had a great presentation from Andrew Ray this morning in our workshop session, and I would like to just commend his work in all of the various components and quite a huge task that he's undertaken with all of the recovery processes and finances that are available to people and guiding all that. I think it's a great report, and it's well worth reading, I think, for any of the public who are wondering what's happening in that space. I would commend them to actually get hold of that report and read it.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Cross?
Look, it was fantastic to hear what has actually been happening in that space. I was a bit concerned that the local recovery plan that has to be written can't actually be written because the template hasn't been released yet. And I was wondering what kind of pressure, if any, we can put on that emergency management committee to deliver that template so we can actually make a recovery plan that can be used for next, hopefully not, but for next time maybe. I think the thing that really stood out for me was that 350 kilometres of our roads were impacted, or our road reserves were impacted by the bushfire. And I mean, that's an incredible amount of road to be worked and made better. You know, what an incredible job that we've had to actually undertake all of that, irrespective of all the other things that happened for people in that space. But it was really good to hear what Andrew has been doing in that space to maintain people's mental health and to give them an opportunity to actually talk about the impact that the bushfires have had on them.
Thank you, Councillor Cross. Anything further, Councillor Ham?
I've been very interested about how, I suppose this comes to the special rate variation, because to me, part of the ongoing long-term financial budget is, this is like an insurance, any insurance cost, you know, you get your car insurance, but it doesn't cover, there's always an ongoing cost. And I feel like this, though we've claimed for a lot, that we probably are still put out by the bushfire financially, which is leading towards, you know, more sustainable fiscal problems. But I was going to first ask the Director of Infrastructure just about the EPA and what you put in an application via the EPA bushfire grant funding to support rehabilitation works. And I know at the time of the fire, we were also looking at the at EPA just as, I mean, it was a disaster, an EPA disaster. And what feedback are we getting up in that area? And are we having to change our practices, which is costing us more because of the bushfire?
Thank you, Councillor Ham. Executive Director. CEO.
In the interim, through the Mayor, Councillor Ham, yes, so we've been working very carefully with the Canberra Joint Organisation and working with the EPA. We have lodged for additional funding for some of these works with a couple of other councils that have had substantial impact. We have been very fortunate with the funding that we've got to date that's been able to assist us, but you are very right, the DFRA funding doesn't cover a substantial amount of council's costs. And these are costs that we don't typically account for because it's not something that we expect to happen on an annual basis. And those costs have had to be worn by the organisation as well as continuing business as usual. So yes, those works have been significant. We've also had various negotiations with the department on how some of these works are carried out, and they've given us specific requirements about the way that we carry out those cleanup work on the roadside and maintaining habitat for animals, ensuring that we don't create an additional fire risk and that we maintain some trees there that don't have any structural issues. So those works have been quite significant. I might ask the Executive Director to continue.
Yeah, could I just have the question again, please? Sorry, Councillor Ham.
The question was in regards to the additional works that are required for the DFRA cleanup of roads and whether the EPA has required any additional requirements on us.
And it was set in context of the special rate variation, you know, how this is an ongoing cost that we hadn't budgeted on in the beginning. And
Yeah. So thank you for the question. Apologies for missing the start of it. So the cleanup funded through the disaster recovery arrangements is sort of covered off on the emergency works part for us. The bit that's missing for us, and I think this is what you're asking, Councillor Ham, is that how that's going to impact us for the next couple of years, particularly through the winters, if we have wet winters and we have additional bushfire impacted vegetation becoming dangerous later on. So we've done a couple of assessments now with arborists. We've tried to take out dangerous trees, but we've tried to leave habitat, obviously, because a lot of our road corridors are quite significant as far as habitat corridors go. But we do recognise that, we get a couple of wet seasons, we get a bit of snow, wind, those sorts of things, that we may have to reassess those trees and take more trees down. And yes, you're correct, we're not funded for that at this stage, and that is something we have been trying to pursue through the EPA and others to try and get help to manage that vegetation for the next couple of years. Does that cover it, Councillor? Yeah.
And I mean, but you have to budget for this because it's like any disaster.
Yeah.
It's a ripple effect, and it will affect things down the road.
Yeah. At the moment, when we're getting called out to deal with bushfire impacted trees that weren't part of the initial cleanup, we are recording those separately in our expenditure system. But yeah, we're tracking what the costs are and what the impacts are, because it's not just the vegetation as well. It's runoff, sediment, all those sorts of things that are still an issue for us. So we are keeping that separate. So hopefully we get the opportunity to try and recoup some of those costs later on. But we're certainly making sure that we do very accurately record those so we can recoup them later if we get the opportunity.
Yeah, tremendous. Thank you.
Councillor Cross?
I noticed in the report that we also waived a lot of rates, about 368,000 Ks of rates for people impacted. Do we get reimbursement for that, or have we already had that?
CFO?
For you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Cross. No, the waiving of rates and charges is not reimbursable, although we did receive a large grant from the Prime Minister's office at the beginning of the crisis, which covered part of it.
But we still have to find that money out of our budget.
And we've also, CFO, we've also waived development application fees.
For you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. And that's an ongoing waiver for 3 years for impacted properties. And sorry, Councillor Cross, you may have referred to the Service New South Wales payments of rates.
Rates discount, Councillor Cross's question.
The rates discount. And yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, we did get that paid by the state.
In full?
In full.
So the rates are repaid, but the development applications are something that we have to bear.
Correct.
Yes, and I don't think too many people across the council would have issues with that. I would hope they wouldn't anyway. Anything further, councillors? Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I might just comment too on, I don't know how much of this is actually in the report that Andrew presented, but the voluntary work done, and that covers a whole range of services and people, but in particular, one thing that I noted in his comments this morning was that just recently one farmer had 95 kilometres of fencing replaced or repaired by Blaze Aid, and I just think that it's timely that we commend that organisation, Blaze Aid, on the work that they have done over the last 2 years now, almost, in helping people with fencing and those very important tasks, and it's still ongoing up until now.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Just to I don't think they did 95 kilometres for one farmer, but they did actually finish the section to make his property finish his boundaries. So they finished that final part of the jigsaw. But I did notice they've had over 1,300 volunteers through Blaze Aid over the time. They've spent over $500,000 locally in buying food and supplies and fencing materials, and they've been served by the volunteers in our community of over 40,000 meals. So it's not just the Blaze Aid people that have come into our community; it's also the community that's supported Blaze Aid. So been fantastic. I'd also like to commend the Community Recovery Officer for his work and thank him for the report. Is there anything further, councillors? No? Okay, let's put the motion. All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Moving through. Snowy Valleys Council Local Heritage Grant, 11.3. Mover?
I'll move that.
Councillor Pritchard, seconder. Councillor Ham. Councillor Pritchard.
It speaks for itself pretty well, and this is just a standard grant process to preserve our local heritage.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchard. Any other councillors? Councillor Cross.
Sorry, I noticed that Tumbarumba put in or a place in Tumbarumba put in an application, but there's no heritage conservation plan there, which disallowed them. So I was just wondering what we're going to be doing about that for next time.
I don't think it disallowed them. I think it reduced their application.
Sorry, my apologies.
So it didn't exclude them. I might, Councillor Ham, you're next.
Well, I thank you very much for bringing that up, Councillor Cross. I looked at the report, and the report actually said that they support the Tumbarumba the funding grant for the 4,000. They said it was appropriate for the being, and out of all the applications, it's the only one that was not approved. And it just, I find it quite unusual, and it doesn't make sense to me what happened there. So I'd really like an explanation.
I think the explanation was it scored lowest, but I'll ask Mr. Holton to explain.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. As the report details, the project ranked lower in the company of the others, mainly because it is not within a heritage conservation area. And this is due to the fact that the LEP, the Local Environment Plan for the former Tumbarumba Shire, did not identify a heritage conservation area. And so, given the limited resources, limited amounts of money available within the program, this particular application ranked the lowest, and therefore the person that assesses these, our heritage consultant, recommended that not be funded in this round. However, did make a note that the applicants should apply in a subsequent round, and I note that this program has funding for the final funding for next financial year, and so it will come up again. In relation to Councillor Cross's question about remedying that situation in regards to the not having an identified heritage conservation area in Tumbarumba, the development of a new local environment plan, which is on to be undertaken this financial year, will consider the application of local heritage or heritage conservation areas in all locations, but this will be very much subject to community consultation and so forth. So whether it still ends up in the LEP is yet to be determined. However, it will be a matter that is considered in that process.
Thank you, Mr. Holton. Councillor Ham.
I just think if you pay a consultant and the consultant actually approves and says this is a viable thing, it should be done and then goes, but it's scored lowest, that the money couldn't have been distributed in a more even way. I will not be voting for this. I don't agree with it.
Thank you, Councillor Ham. Any other councillors? Councillor Risselman?
Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure if we're in committee, but are we as council able to reject this proposal and ask for a reconsideration in relation to the dispersal of funds in a different way?
Look, I guess we could, but we've got a long-standing association with the assessor, and we've passed numerous grants in the time of this council where the grants that scored the least miss out. This is nothing different. The difference, it appears, is locality, and that's one of the reasons why it scored lower is because of the LEP. Now, if you do have a property and it is it is zoned in a heritage area, or it is zoned a heritage item, it has advantages, and it can possibly have disadvantages if you want to develop it. So, you get the good with the bad. So, I think the rules are there. We've got something to decide on today. I think we need to vote on it.
Could I have just one further question, Mr. Mayor, if I may? If Mr. Holton has the actual application ratings, if they took out the national heritage rating to put this particular application at the bottom, what position would that application be in?
I'm not sure, but I'll ask Mr. Holton.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. As the report states, what has been proposed was deemed to be worthy. However, as that site is not within a heritage conservation area, a known heritage conservation area, it ranked lower, and the other applications were all ranked higher because of the status of that area. So the investment in improving the heritage values of those buildings within the heritage areas was seen as a higher priority by the assessor. And it's important to note that what is recommended in this report is exactly what was recommended by our heritage consultant, who who assessed the applications and determined the priority. I can't give you a specific like where it would have ranked if that was not the case. However, it is important to note that it was seen as being of value. However, because it's not in a identified heritage conservation area, it dropped in its ranking and priority.
Mr. Mayor, in following on from that question, thank you, Mr. Holton. But this this exercise tends to be eliminating many towns because they're not recognised as being heritage, and that's, I think, a particularly unfortunate part of the heritage ranking, because it's discrimination. You have to have that before you can apply, and it's not clearly stated in the applications.
Councillors, can I just add, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, that we do review our grant processes, and we will be doing that with the new council next year. Maybe that's something that we can highlight to the councillors to look at those particular provisions and see whether they want to do any adjustment to the criteria for that grant. But as it stands, that's the way that we've advertised that grant. And hence, that's the way that we're processing those applications.
It's pretty self-explanatory, and it's very, very self-explanatory. It's a heritage grant. It's not anything else. It's a heritage grant, and it's for heritage items. And if they're in a heritage precinct, all the better. Can I suggest that
the last line of the report says, with lower ranking projects receiving a lesser amount of funds. I would have thought, you know, and I mean, it's not these people. It is not the fact that they don't have a conservation plan and LEP because of bureaucracy has just ruled them out.
Correct.
Councillors,
Mr. Mayor, what other towns would have been, if they had applied, would have been worthy but not qualifying if they weren't heritage? I know Adelong's heritage listed. Where else?
Yeah, look, I'm not sure, but I do know in the past there have been times where this has been undersubscribed. This time it's oversubscribed.
That wasn't my question. Are there areas of Tumut heritage listed? Are there areas of Talbingo heritage listed? I mean, where? I know Adelong has, and I recommend and highly, highly support that. But I'm just questioning where else. I know there's none in Batlow.
I think there'd be heritage items in Batlow. Certainly there are in Tumut, I know. Or maybe we ask for a listing of those items.
My question is, it shouldn't be in that particular.
We probably should be in committee for this, but yeah. I'm asking that we put the motion. Can we put the motion? Councillor Lardy, you're asking that we put the motion? Yeah. Okay, all in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4. Against? We've got Isselman and Ham against. The motion's carried. Thank you, councillors. Moving on. Minutes of the Riverina Library. Extraordinary meeting. Mover, Councillor Cross, Councillor Ham. Councillor Cross.
Yeah, as we've come to understand, the Wagga City Council has, at their last meeting, agreed to withdraw from the Riverina Regional Library Committee. So that will have implications for the other members of the RRL, but there is a commitment from those members to remain. So a working party has been put together to look at options of how we can go forward to make up that shortfall that there will be with the Wagga City Council withdrawing. We've got until June next year, 2022, to look at whether we can invite other council areas to come on board and take up that shortfall. In the meantime, getting expressions of interest for that executive committee or for that executive council to oversee the way the Regional Riverina Library operates.
Thank you, Councillor Cross. Councillor Ham.
Councillor Cross, are you able to tell me, are there fears that our service levels are going to change?
No, not the service levels, but there will be an implication for costings. That's my understanding anyway. I could be wrong.
That it may cost more for the services we have.
Yeah, so that's why we're looking at seeing whether there are other councils that may be interested in coming on board to spread that load out more evenly.
And what's the transition period?
We've got until June next year, which is when the new sort of leasing arrangements, I guess, or the new agreement comes into play. So that's why there's been a working party that's been established to look at options.
Councillor Pritchard.
I'm astounded that this has happened. I mean, it was one of the outstanding examples of cooperation throughout the Riverina. It is extraordinarily useful I'm dismayed that it's come to this with its key player has withdrawn. Is there something behind the scenes that we don't know about? It's like just asking innocently for an explanation.
It's all about cost, Councillor Pritchard. I think they can do it for cheaper.
Yeah, they think, yes. They think at the moment they feel that they are providing the services that the RRL already provides, so, and that they can do that better.
And they may in fact be subsidising other councils.
Well, I think we can't let this one go. We have to ask them to reconsider it and what do they want us to do. We can't just let it go.
It's too late. They've moved to let it go. They've walked away.
Yes.
There's a new council in Wagga, I guess, at the same time. I think we should write to them, ask them to reconsider.
They've had a consultant. They've had a consultant investigate the remaining with the RRL, and that's been one of the outcomes from that.
Oh, terrible.
CEO.
Mr Mayor, Councillor Pritchard, I have had discussions with the General Manager at Wagga, and it is a great shame to see Wagga withdraw from the service. The administration of the service has done an evaluation and believe that we can still operate that service. Industrially, there will be some of those costs that will transfer across with Wagga withdrawing, and we will work through those provisions. There are other interested councils in joining the service. It will mean that we'll have to make some adjustments as we go through. My understanding is that Wagga's preference was to actually run some of those services outside the RRL. So they were paying for a service that they were also actually operating by themselves. So yes, we would like to see Wagga stay with the service, and they have been a very vital part of the service over the years. They have also assessed a number of times, and this time they've made that final decision. It has been a lengthy decision, and there have been a number of conversations, and we have encouraged Wagga to stay over a number of years. However, they have disappointingly made that decision to go out on their own and run their service. So we will make it work with what we have left, and certainly in discussions with a few other councils who are interested in joining the service and getting the benefits of that regional service.
Thank you. Councillors, anything further? Put the motion. All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Minutes of the Disability Inclusion Access Reference Group, 26th of August. Mover, Councillor Cross. Seconder, Councillor Risselman. The chessboard's moved, makes it more difficult. Councillor Cross.
At this meeting, it was decided that the meetings would no longer be monthly, but changed to bi-monthly. We discussed at the last meeting a survey to go out to people, and this will be distributed through the Survey Monkey at a later date. We're looking at widening the membership to include all the other organisations that have an interest or work with people with disabilities. So, for example, Flourish and the Tumut Community Association are now members of this group too. So it's good to have a broader base.
Thank you, Councillor Cross. Anything further? All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Councillors, that takes us to the end of the ordinary meeting, which brings us to the confidential section of the meeting. The Local Government Act provides the council may close to the public that part of the meeting that deals with matters of confidential nature. Section 10.2 lists such matters. The grounds on which meetings is closed to the public will be specified in the decision to close the meeting and recorded in the minutes of the meeting. The recommendation is that council move into confidential to consider the matters listed in the confidential section of the agenda in accordance with section 10.2 of the Local Government Act for the reasons specified. 13.1, the write-off of debts. 13.2, request for tender, design and installation of aeronautical ground lighting at the Tumut Aerodrome. And 13.3, request for tender 2021-08, supply of bulk materials. Councillors, do I have a move for that? Councillor Smith and seconder. Councillor Larter, all in favour? That's unanimous. Councillors, I'll ask you to make sure that you're in an area that cannot be viewed by anyone else or heard by anyone else, if you can all verify that. Yep, okay.